Okay, so today we'll talk is the 29th of December 2021, and we'll talk about two architects, Rafiq Azam, who was born on the 29th of December, and John Portman, who died on December 29th. I will begin with this architect born in Bangladesh, Rafiq Azam, who is contemporary of ours, and an interesting architect. So Muhammad Rafiq Azam, born on the 29th of December 1963, is a Bangladeshi architect who is principal architect at Shatoto Architecture. This is the firm, the office that he founded. Here he is as a young man who was very attracted by drawing and painting, and I like this picture of him. It shows, an artistically oriented man, and with a level of dedication and seriousness which I admire. We are going to see some handmade drawings by him, showing skill and sensitivity. But later in his professional career, and he became quite successful, I'm afraid some of this artistic leaning, if I am to call it so, seem to become a little bit weak. I will elaborate when we arrive at those drawings. Here he is, I don't know exactly at what age, but if he was born in 1963, it means he is now 59, 58 years old. And Bangladesh has remarkable architects. And I think it's not just the fact that Louis Khan built in Dhaka significantly, but Bangladesh itself as a country had and has very interesting architects. In fact, some of them, the most admired by me, so-called green architecture, comes from Bangladesh. Now, I know that the very name of the office of this architect refers to green living and implicitly green architecture, but there is a level of mundane realities in his work, which in my opinion are only partially green, but I will say more about this later. He is a very skillful architect, and he was able to build some even larger buildings, and even for corporations, and the capitalistic corporations of the present, in themselves, I do not think they are very so-called green. But anyway, let's look at his works. So Rafiq Azam is a graduate from Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology in 1989. His practice, Shatoto, Architecture for Green Living, was established in May 1995. Let's begin with his residence, built by Shatoto, his office, his firm, Mamoon Residence. He is quite good at bringing in vegetation, almost organically incorporated into his buildings, and his buildings have a certain playfulness that show indeed skill in manipulating volumes, spaces. Now, this is not a modest residence, far from it, but it has an air of playfulness which I admire, which I like. It's not, we cannot say that it's a highly original or even idiosyncratic architecture, because it is not. But it is done well, and this alternation between wall and vegetation and water, because you see here also the presence of water at various levels, I think show skill. Now, again, certain questions perhaps should be asked, but there is always a complicity between the architect and the high-end strata of society. This is a reality, and it has unfortunate attributes, but it's probably unavoidable because the architect works, almost by definition for those who can afford to hire them. This is a building which, for the standards of Bangladesh, which at least for some time was considered one of the poorest countries in the world, not spiritually or culturally or artistically poor, but economically, this kind of building is, telling a different story. But, I already formulated a certain reticence vis-a-vis this aspect of what he does. But when I look at this picture, I see a very skillfully integrated nature into the ambiance, the environment of the building. And I don't know if he does the landscape design or if he uses the services of a landscape architect or a gardener, whatever. The result is good. And I'm not so sure about the presence of this swimming pool at, on the terrace at a higher level in the building. To me, it's a little bit, I don't know. For me, subjectively, is a little bit questionable. But as questionable it is, again, in my opinion, the discrepancy between this building and the reality of Bangladesh in general. And I am tempted to think that this complicity, if I can call it so, with the rich, didn't have a good effect on him. And I will arrive at this a little bit later. But just architecturally, if we can separate architecture from ethics, his work is good. Is good, and it has even charm. It's true there are plenty of concrete nests or concrete walls here. Concrete is not the most so-called green material to build with. This is known. It produces a lot of pollution, but if you build a building, it's hard to avoid a certain level of pollution. But this building, it's so opulent in its dimensions, and it's almost triumphalism that yeah. Anyway, some people, like the question is, with Nike, yes, we can. I mean, well, they can. I'm not envious. It's just that I think there is a display of affluence here, which ignores the realities of what is outside of the building. I mean, look at this swimming pool. We are not in Hollywood. Even in Hollywood, I would say it would be, ostentatious. But in Bangladesh, to have something like this is, in my opinion, disputable taste. Despite the fact that I recognize the talent of the architect, and this I notice in other cases, where well-meaning actually architects of significant talent they employ the talent, in my opinion, a little bit indiscriminately, because I think an architect cannot be indifferent about what is happening across the street. It shouldn't be indifferent. Yes, Luis Barragan had a big house too, but there wasn't this level of, opulence. I mean, look at the solitude of that person there in the water. It's, in a way, is a metaphor for the solitude of the very rich in a city or a town in the country where very few are like this. So maybe he deserves his solitude. I mean, you try to imagine how much you have to pay just to maintain this swimming pool, and it's not just the swimming pool. It's yeah. I actually, and I do like the way he uses the greenery in conjunction with the walls, with the buildings. I'm not so fond of his manipulation of water. I think water here is a little bit, strangely, a little bit less free than other parts of the building. It's very contained, in this rectangle of the swimming pool, and it's very, I don't know, without lyricism. Although I think water is almost, by itself, it represents an invitation to lyricism. This is kind of strange, because otherwise we see all kinds of interesting spaces in the building, and personally I would have expected him, if he wanted to have this swimming pool on the second floor, he could have done it with more imagination. Look at these beautiful drawings done with ink, and I imagine with a brush. I truly admire this drawing. I think it's perfect, if I am to use this word, for a sketchy drawing. It's lyrical, it's suggestive, it's poetical, it's done with a sure hand. I truly think he had and has, I imagine the talent is still there, talent. So this is the building. It's almost an institutional building. I mean, this is a private residence, but look at it, it has 4 floors and easily could have had 5. And it's this could have been a public building, a museum or a school, or I don't know. Anyway, another residence by Chateauto. Again, the water, in my opinion, is a big problem in his work. It's done so unimaginatively, it's like, this could have, I don't know, it could have been more playfully drawn, so to speak. Yes, there is the accident of this boat here, but otherwise the water is, I'm really surprised, because the sketch we looked at before showed a very sensitive man. But I see a different spirit in the building than in the swimming pool. The swimming pool, in my opinion, is very rigidly drawn. Yes, there are nice details. Even here, he works well with concrete. He knows what he's doing. And it's just that this, sorry for being subjective, but this is my impression, that the swimming pool has a different spirit than the building. The building has a level of playfulness, while here, all that playfulness is gone. He could have done many things. He could have used, I don't know, ceramic tiles on the bottom of the swimming pool, or he could have create some curves which go very well with water, with fluidity of water. Now, water is strangely, I really don't understand why this man, who is clearly a skillful architect, didn't honor the spirit of water in a more, fluid way, so to speak. Anyway, this circle in the roof appears in several of his works. It's almost a trademark for him. bigger or smaller. We are going to see it again. But look at these spaces, it's, is this a house? It could have been a museum. But again, this is truly where he is very good at. I think the way he employs the green is very, very sensitive and very skillful. And it's done it's not manicure, the green. It's left, I don't know. I imagine he worked with the landscape architect, but the decision to do it in this way is probably his as well, if not only his. I think he understands green well, meaning by green, grass, bushes, little trees, or not so little. He's good with this. He's also good with concrete, and he incorporates wooden work convincingly as well. Maybe not as dramatically convincingly or convincing like Louis Kahn, but no, he is not an architect from whom we cannot learn anything. It's not true. I think he is a good architect. It's just that I think this building, because of its size, doesn't seem to have the intimacy which I like to connect with what a home is. It's big. And this, besides the presence of the green and the presence of wood in the parts of the building, there isn't a lot of intimacy. But then look at the building again. We are having here 5 floors, and while water is at the center, I think this water could have had a more, as I said, sensitive but even spiritual role in the physiognomy of the building, and it doesn't. It's just a plain swimming pool, very secular, so to speak. I mean, I don't know if I expressed well what I wanted to say. Because the spirituality of water, like the spirituality of grass, I think he understood well the spirit or the spirituality. I know I'm probably getting carried away by strange words. I wanted to say the spirituality of grass. Yes, because I think like anything made by nature, and if Frank Lloyd Wright was right when he said, when he was asked, do you believe in God? And he said, I do, but I spell it nature. So if nature is the closest proof, the most tangible proof of the existence of God, then we could say that there is a spirit. Maybe we can. I'm a little unsure that I chose the correct words, but maybe we can say yes, that a blade of grass has spirit, because its creator had and has spirit. So okay, I can be called an animist, but I admire the blade of grass. I also admire water, and I think he doesn't vis-a-vis water. He seems to be a little bit stiff, but anyway. Do you see here the winter solstice and the summer solstice? Well, I made a presentation about the winter solstice on the winter solstice, and there was very little interest in it. But I think not just Le Corbusier, but other architects, and here is one of those other architects, cannot neglect the winter solstice and the summer solstice, and that's good for him. But it's not good for us who continue to neglect this extremely important cosmical event called the winter solstice. This is a drawing he did. I forgot who that person was. But again, here we see his philosophical, his artistic side, his poetical side, and this side, if it was more challenged by commissions, or if he allowed it to be more manifest, I think it would have, maybe he would have had less mundane success, but maybe he would have had more poetical, philosophical, artistic, and qualitative success. I'm not saying that, but we'll arrive at some works a little bit later, where, in my opinion, the collaboration, the complicity, I call it maybe a little bit provocatively, the complicity between the architect and high capitalism. But let's look at this mosque that he built, or his office built, Shatoto. Text description provided by the architects, located adjacent to the Azimpur graveyard in Lalbagh. The mayor, Mohammad Hanif Jumah Mosque, is a threshold space inspired by the Azam Shah Mosque built by the Mughals in the Lalbagh fort. The new design is a departure from traditional mosques in both physical and philosophical designs, combining all the new ideas into a contemporary concept. A key feature derived from the Mughal mosque was the Shan, an extended terrace attached to the entrance of the main hall. The Shan provides additional prayer space when the interior is full, but otherwise acts as a social hub for the community. Since it borders Azimpur Road on the south and Azimpur Graveyard on the north, the mosque acts as a transitional space between the terrestrial and celestial, where the Shan is the veil between the realms. I'm always very interested in this dialogue, even if veiled, and perhaps is supposed to be veiled, between the terrestrial and the celestial. The main hall is a large open space held up by cement columns with trunks that expand into canopies, which hold up the slabs above, creating an indoor forest. Windows along the north and east walls flood the room with daylight, while the perforated brick wall on the south filters light and noise coming from the road. Floor lights are organized in Qatar lines to indicate where to stand during prayer, and alongside ring lights attached to the columns provide unobtrusive ambient lighting. And this is the building. I'm not so convinced about this column, this rather burlesque mushroom columns, which mimic a little bit, but in a burlesque way, the mushroom columns of Frank Lloyd Wright at the Johnson Wax complex of buildings. These are less graceful than what Frank Lloyd Wright did. I don't know exactly why he chose to do so. I like the appearance of the building towards the outside, and I like the brickwork, and I like the austerity, the simplicity of the building. It connects with the street. We see it's a street without glory. You know, there are many people with bicycles. Yes, there are a few cars, but all in all, there is a certain democracy of the road or of the street, which is a reality. The building, I think, is well built, you know, and it's a good work. It's a good work. You know, it's not a conventionally looking mosque, but the interior, again, it bothers me. These columns, you know, that they are too rhetorical. This was not needed to be like this, you know. But anyway, this was his choice. Someone meditating here. Here we could say, is this a mosque? In a certain way, I like the fact that it doesn't look like a mosque. Today, when I prepared a new edition of the Anarch Daily, which is my reaction to Arch Daily, I commented on the fact that somehow mosques seem to be more interesting than churches. Maybe for a Christian, as I am, because of the otherness of this other religion. But I don't know, I didn't see too many contemporary churches interesting, but I have seen more mosques that are interesting, architecturally speaking. And I wonder why. I mean, look at this, even this tower in its primal simplicity, I think it's architecture, maybe with a capital A. I like it, and I like this brickwork. I think it's a good building. If those columns, mushroom columns, were done differently, in my opinion, would have been better. But who knows? That is my opinion. Maybe it's not the correct one. So seen from above, you would not think that this is a mosque. You think it's a school or something, you know, maybe even some kind of a town hall, but it is a mosque. And I like the fact that it doesn't scream at you, you know, look at me, I'm a mosque. You know, it has a level of reticence, which I think is good. Because I don't believe in a triumphalist church or mosque. You know, quite the opposite. I think it should be modest, because how else are we to interact or relate to the above or to the divinity, whatever that divinity might be. On the other hand, just as I expressed some reticence vis-a-vis his employment of water in those large swimming pools, I have some doubts about this you know, rather mundane and fashionable usage of glass. You know, I mean, you look at the brickwork here, and then this glass wall is too conveniently, in my opinion, modernistic and, you know, almost mundane. I prefer something like this, more traditional in a way, more you know, more subdued, without the extravagance of a certain technology of steel, you know, steel and glass. Because that steel and glass thing that we looked at doesn't connect with these people that we see on the street. No, you know, it belongs maybe to the Museum of Modern Art in New York or in Frankfurt or I don't know where. But there we don't see such scenes on the street. Here we can admire the impressiveness of a simple campanile, a simple tower, you know, made of brick, but it could be very powerful, architecturally speaking and emotionally speaking. Now another, this is a collective housing, South 5053 apartments. Even at the level of blocks of flats, he is good, in my opinion. And again, he is combining concrete with brickwork in a rather, you know, convincing way. So let's read a little bit. These two apartment block, so two buildings, well, is one of a kind design of Chateau responding to the new building construction rules for Dhaka, 2006, the capital of Bangladesh. Such rules require a 50% mandatory free ground coverage and the maximum building height of 45 meters. But they look monumental, and he's creative with this concrete wall. There is a certain optimistic modernism here that maybe in the West is not so much present any longer, but here in Bangladesh it is. Again, this building is certainly not meant for underprivileged people. This is not social housing, but being a collective building, we think he is honoring, the masses, so to speak, although a segment of that larger group of people. And as such, I'm more willing to accept his building than those opulent, large, big private buildings. On the other hand, although the name of his office makes reference to green living and green architecture, so much glass in a country, in a warm country like Bangladesh, I don't think is adequate. Well, it's not adequate in a cold climate either. But you see here, I see his estrangement in a way from the lyricism and the modesty and the poetry of that sketch that we looked at. This glass here, it's almost the whole wall. It's just glass. It's a gesture of being seduced by mainstream architecture, and in my opinion, this is problematic. He could have used here smaller windows, with smaller fragments of glass, bring in some wood, to make it more sensitive. Like this is, almost like a well-to-do hotel on the Riviera or whatever. And this opening, round opening here is, I don't know if it has any symbolism. I hope it's not just a graphic, rather convenient addition to the aesthetics of the building. Here is another one, but smaller. Anyway, I understand that Dhaka and Bangladesh want to, accelerate their road towards, what is called, being developed, or being progressive, or being, up to the time. But I think the local culture is very important, and it's very important everywhere, not just in Bangladesh. If you can connect with that local culture and be less seduced by mainstream architecture, I think is best. But maybe not all decisions were his. I mean, we see here the south breeze. Well, this south breeze is clearly a sign of real estate enterprise. Yeah, what can we do? But fortunately, we have the green which saves the day. And again, he's good at bringing the green in close proximity to the building. And I think the more green we have, the better. I'm preparing a presentation. I don't know when I will be able to make it, about abandoned architectures, because I saw some incredible pictures from China where abandoned villages became totally covered in green, and they are quite beautiful. They are astonishing. And so maybe we can trust nature, that even when we have abandoned places, nature will bring something to them that maybe will make us reconsider and come back to those buildings. Now, this is I anticipated this is a collaboration, not to say complicity, between him and corporations. And it's a big building, quite rich. You'll see it. So the description of the architects: the SP Setia, considered as one of the largest developers in Malaysia. The new large venture Setia Alam is located in the Shah Alam area, southwest of Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia. In this approximately 5,000 acres of new city, SP Sedia decided to build their own headquarters on a 4 acre of land. This developed the idea for a very formal design approach to emphasize on the social commitment of SP Setia to contribute in the national development of Malaysia through their edifice in this new city. Further to that, the Setia headquarters have been designed as a green building and achieved first ever private commercial building in Malaysia, Green Buildings Platinum certification. This is the building, and no one can contest its elegance, but I think there is a but. Because, you know, behind this glory, architectural glory, which I'm sure was quite expensive, I'm not sure very well what lies. You know, lies in both senses. This I would say triumphalist headquarters communicate an optimism and a dignified facade that hides the engine of the whole enterprise, and the engine of the whole enterprise is money. Yes, we can afford to have these columns, which are not dictated by structural reasons, touch upon water. There is, the level of rhetorics here is high. Yes, they are probably impressive, but it's a luxury which hides behind it, I think, mechanisms which from a moral standpoint are perhaps less glorious. We see here, just like in the case of the mosque, this glass which is rather conveniently and almost commercially employed. Yes, is done well, technically and aesthetically, but it turns me off somehow, the convenience of so much glass, which implies a lot of air conditioning, which needs to be pumped into the building. So there is a level of modernism here and of optimism that I think is ostentatiously underlining the grandeur, the force, the power, the meaning of this company, and I wonder what they are, real estate speculators or I mean, look at it, we are not in Brasilia. This is not a governmental building or a palace of justice. But even for that, maybe it would have been a little bit rhetorical. Yes, it's it could be approximately impressive, especially if you look at it from here. But what is this large roofing and this canopy and this cantilever part telling you? This is the building of, if not of God, is the building of one of the gods. And these corporations are exactly this. They are godlike. And yes, the building is telling you this. We have an opening here which shows the building is blessed by the gods above. So between the gods below and the gods above, there is a communication. They are part of the same family, so to speak. I don't know. I mean, this kind of triumphalist capitalist architecture doesn't receive my my great enthusiastic acceptance, but nor does so much glass. It doesn't. This. Yes, it's done skillfully. Yes, but I would rather have it this here, like here, where you have a certain impressionism of the facade, which is divided in, in smaller fragments and somehow connects with the smallness and the impressionism of the grass or the bushes on the ground. Yes, I would rather accept something like this than the large pieces of glass that we see here. Anyway, lots of columns, what can we say? It's a building built by a corporation, which obviously didn't have a lot of limitations in terms of, the money it had at its disposal. There are such buildings all over the world, of course. We have seen similar buildings by the architect of the World Trade Center. He built also, he worked for, other enterprises, capitalist enterprises, with an equal, ethos of, emphasizing the godlike, stance of the client. Well, in my opinion, this sketch is less skillful and less poetical and less discreet than what we saw early. And you see, I have the feeling it's just an intuition, and I could be wrong, but I have the feeling that his success was also, in part at least, the cause of a certain defeat, actually. I hope I'll say a few more things about this. Now, the South Water Carries also by the same. It's another, building. Let's read. In Dhaka, 500 square mile city has over time become an area of complete urban mayhem. Getting a lake and a narrow strip of green patch on the backside of the plot was a fortune in a city where total city green is not more than 5%. This 8-family house is located at the United Nations Road in this diplomatic zone. A deal made between the landowner and the developer was to divide the 7,500 square feet plot in equal two pieces to construct two 6-story buildings of 2,800 square feet area on each floor in order to share equally. So, well, I understood some green was allowed here, but again, these are spaces for the privileged. And look at these spaces, they are huge. Easily you could say this is a public building. It's not. It's not. I really wonder, how does the architect feel, when he's not looking at the street, when he's building such a building in a city with so much poverty, because it does have a lot of poverty, Bangladesh. Because, I am puzzled because, again, the way he employs the green, I think is very poetical and lyrical and modest even. It's the green is not manicured, is allowed to, to be free. And this shows skill, a sensitivity. But the scale of the spaces, and not to speak about also the functions, yes, I understand. An architect has to make a living. An architect has to build if he's to survive as an architect. But would you call this space an intimate, homely space? It looks more like a conference room, doesn't it? And I don't know. It's not work. It's not. What is this? I imagine it's just one apartment per floor. So, it's huge. I understand there are differences between people and their social status. I understand. But when the distance between the people is so big, between the very poor and the very rich, a sense of justice, as someone born in the Libra zodiacal sign, this sense of justice makes me a little bit uneasy. On the other hand, I admire again, I don't know if he had a saying in this, but the green is beautiful. Even this tree allowed to grow through the pavement of this path, and the proximity to the apartments is, if he would have allowed himself to be more inspired by what is here, I think it would have been better. But yeah, still a good and interesting architect. A little bit mundane, too mundane he became. I cannot forget that first picture that I showed with him as a young man painting on the floor with long hair at the time. I wish he kept something of that spirit, but maybe if he kept something of that spirit, he would not have had the commissions he had. It's possible. Kenneth Frampton recommended me a book called Small is Beautiful. I didn't read it, but I like its title, Small is Beautiful. And, perhaps we should reflect just on this very title, Small is Beautiful. Maybe this architect from Bangladesh should not forget the small, because I think he is capable of understanding what is small, because I see the way he understands grass and the bushes and the plants. But I also feel like he's seduced by, largeness and bigness and, big budgets and so on. Maybe his soul is like these plants, maybe he should allow his soul to grow further, and escape the darkness of its enclosure, maybe. And look at this drawing. It's not the same like the first sketch. First is done with the markers, in my opinion, and there is a difference between a brush with ink, like in traditional drawings, and drawings done with markers. Markers are, have something artificial about them, and the colors are, artificial. And I don't know. I understand he's in a hurry to build more and more, but I feel it's a loss. And look at that blue. Look how he even wrote lake. It's done in a hurry. If someone who has big commissions coming upon him, and he's too much of a rushing architect here. And I actually think he betrays the spirit of water and the spirit of the lake with his aggressive blueness here. And look at the trees. The trees are not drawn sensitively anymore. No, they are not. So I feel it's a loss. Maybe this is the price of success. The apartments are huge. I mean, look at this, it's one apartment per floor. Look at this space here with a lonely table with 8 chairs here in the center. They are huge apartments. many bathrooms are here? 3, 4 bathrooms. You know, well, not 27 like Mr. Bill Gates has in his own house. I lived for several months with an architect who worked on the house, one of the houses of Bill Gates in the United States. He was an architect from Hong Kong, and he told me that he had 27 bathrooms in his house. A house he lived in with his wife and maybe a few people helping with the maintenance of the house, but 27 bathrooms. And Mr. Bill Gates is someone who claims that he's interested in saving, Africa, saving the world and saving water. But then why did he build 27 bathrooms for his private residence? You know, there are contradictions here, aren't they? The same kind of marker drawing, which is not the same man. I guess, again, the price of success. This is the price of success. Otherwise, there are qualities here in the plan, you know, the dispersion of the green in small patches here and there. And yes, but I like more what I saw at the beginning. I mean, or I like more what I didn't see yet. I hope he will return to that young man, but is this possible? To still work for corporations and to draw with ink and the brush on the floor, having long hair. We all know that the hair, you know, is capriciously sometimes leaving our heads, but you understand. I'm longing for a more romantic time, and that romantic time seems to vanish the more one has so-called success and collaborations or complicities. Start with big corporations, large buildings, large commissions, and so on. He's still a good architect. Okay, now we go to a different kind of architect, but on the other hand, maybe, a very different kind of architect. We talked about him 2 or 3 weeks ago because he was born in December. But he died on the 29th of December. And as always, I try to pay homage to architects who mean something for architecture, even if they died on the day they died. So here is John Portman, born in 1924 and died just 4 years ago on the 29th of December. So John Calvin Portman Jr., born on December 4th, 1924 and died on December 29th, 2017, was an American neo-futuristic, strange word, neo-futuristic. I mean, futuristic means in itself to be neo, but neo-futuristic is redundant. Anyway, neo-futuristic architect and real estate developer. Wow, both an architect and a real estate developer. This is unique indeed, widely known for popularizing hotels and office buildings with multi-storied interior atriums or atria. Portman also had a particularly large impact on the cityscape of his hometown of Atlanta, with a Peachtree Center complex serving as downtown's business and tourism anchor from 1970s onward. The Peachtree Center area includes Portman-designed Hyatt, Westin, and Marriott hotels. Portman's plans typically deal with primitives in the forms of symmetrical squares and circles. This man built for himself. Can you believe it? I mean, no wonder he is smiling here, being over 90. He also lived a long life. This man built for himself. It's as simple as this. So Portman incurred the mistrust of critics and his fellow professionals, in particular for combining the role of developer and architect. He was dangerously conflicted, they thought. For Portman, development was a means to achieve his artistic goals. Architecture is what I'm about, he said, was one of his declarations. He also said, I came to the conclusion that if I were to have an impact and not be just part of a process I could not control, I should understand the entire project from conception through completion. That led me to real estate. On another occasion, he put the same point, pithily but grandiosely, like this: I am the Medici to my own Leonardo. Well, he, presumably he thought that he was Leonardo, but he was also a de Medici, a Medici for the Leonardo within himself. He didn't quite choose the best example because Leonardo, although he had many sketches of architectures, he never built anything, unless that, but it's debated, that stair at Chambord, something was imagined or designed by him. Otherwise, Leonardo didn't build anything, while John Portman built a lot, huge hotels. I mean, it's hard not to be envious of this man, because he did bring something to architecture. His, immense atriums seem to testify about a longing, if not, I mean, there is something, but let's arrive at those pictures, because this man who was, yes, he was a real estate force, and he made a lot of money with real estate speculations. He did have an artistic side, and that artistic side is manifest in the very buildings that he built. Even this large complex of buildings, I think have a genuine architectural quality. I mean, look at this. This is the atrium. This man spent money, his own money, to, in a way, to transcend the very limitations of the money that he was otherwise working for. It's truly a unique case. I mean, to build such huge buildings, he was, could you say that this man was interested in just making money? No, because he would have thought so, he would not have built these giant atriums, which seem to evoke almost a paradoxical and unexpected longing for the above, not to say the divine. It's amazing in a way what he did. Not always very convincingly architecturally speaking. I always dislike his choice of external elevators. They are too much Las Vegas for me, but the visceral, huge vertical atriums are something impressive, and I wonder what he felt when he did this, because functionally, strictly functionally speaking, they are useless. I mean, these are spaces that some would describe as being lost. Like Philip Johnson put it humorously, he said, architecture is the art of losing space. Well, in a way, this is very explicit and obvious in the works of John Portman. But there is something to it. I think it's the metaphysical dimension of this. I mean, a hotel is a commercial enterprise. Architecturally speaking, a hotel most of the time is commerce. But this interior, so vertical, so vertiginously vertical and huge, they seem to testify about something almost metaphysical. I hope I'm not getting carried away here by wishful thinking, but look even here, this interior of one of his hotels has a certain drama and certain sculpturalness, and obviously this was not economically bringing in monetary advantages, it was an expensive thing to do. And yet he did it. So I think he was honest when he said that architecture is all he's about. That he wanted to use the money he made with real estate in order to achieve an architecturalness, the kind he dreamt of. Now, this is a center in China, and look at this. Even these towers, in my opinion, are not the least qualified architectures in the field of towers that I have seen. Maybe the top is a little bit weak architecturally, but if you can neglect what is going at the top, I think the towers have a certain dignity even. They are not frivolous architectural gestures, and they could have been easily, but they are not. So the man did know something about architecture and did have some dignity. All this complex was done by him. And look, in the proximity of the much seen and much discussed building by Rem Koolhaas. Is this a lesser architecture than what Koolhaas did? I don't think so. It's maybe not so spectacular, so to speak, as the building by Koolhaas, but this actually is a quality. I like the simplicity of these prisms, and in my opinion, they do say we are architecture, and they are. I have some doubts about what is happening at the top, and he could have said the same thing, and the buildings in the same way, the building grew, but I don't know. And this I had seen in other buildings by him, and will arrive at them, where the top is a little bit questionable. Here, I think is better. Leave the building simple to the very end, to the top. But all in all, I think it's not a bad composition. It's a cluster of buildings that, as I said, have a certain dignity, and they probably function well for the purpose they were built. Again, it didn't need the flashiness of this top reddish thing. No, in my opinion, this is a mistake. But yeah, if this was not here, the buildings would have been almost refreshing, because they didn't try to impress through all kinds of twistings and distortions and all the rest. They are simple prisms that serve a function, and I think they work well, with the exception of the top, in my opinion. The coronavirus pandemic, South China Morning Post. Obviously, this picture is rather recent. So this is a large complex of buildings built by Portman in China. So let's read to a few words written by him. Architecture is not about things, it is about people and life. I would agree. John Portman said to the dean of the Graduate School of Design at Harvard, Mohsen Mostafavi, he used to be, now he's not, he's at Harvard, in a wide-ranging interview that starts off the provocative book Portman's America and Other Speculations, published last year by Lars Müller. Portman's words are not notable in themselves. They are the kind of cliched line almost every architect has uttered at one time or another. It's true. What makes them striking is how passionately Portman believed in them. So, the Marriott Marquis Hotel in Times Square, New York City. This is the model. It was built. I even entered on the ground floor. I didn't go to other floors. On the ground floor, it didn't seem to, because yes, it's Times Square. It's very, alarmingly catchy. Everything screams at you, look at me, look at me, look at me. It's very commercial. Actually, the building, having no much advertising, at least in the atrium, is rather austere compared to the madness in Times Square. I still think he could have used different, less eye-catchy elevators, but that's what he liked. What can I say? He built it for himself. This building was built with his own money. Maybe not only his own money, but you can imagine in Times Square in New York, a square inch costs a lot. And to build such a building there is, you need, pharaonic numbers. And look at the building. What I don't like is here, what is this? It's, and it connects in a way with the elevators. If there were if this was not done in this way and the elevators were different, I think the building would have had a stringence, a power, an honesty, a virility even that would have been from the outside is not, but I still think he has a problem with ending at the top. This didn't need this convenient glass curved topping. Otherwise, look, the building has a certain, as I said, virility. It has force. It is sincere. It has character, despite the fact that yes, it is a hotel. I mean, it is a commercial building and placed in the most commercial place on earth, Times Square in New York City. Otherwise, yes, it's a hotel, with hotel rooms, a corridor, but this space is what makes it different. And you'll see in other projects by him that space. Look at this. I think this is good architecture. Yes, there is a little bit of concession here towards commercialism. It is. It's New York. It's a hotel. It's John Portman. But still, otherwise, in its simplicity, the building has some qualities, architecturally speaking. Again, please make abstractions of the elevators, which don't have the austerity of the building. Otherwise, has enough dignity. It didn't need these accessories like this, which are almost burlesque. I don't know why he designed them like this. Or maybe he didn't design them, but he chose them to be like this. Although I expect they were designed for this specific building, although he used something similar in other hotels. Now, the Atlanta Marriott Marquis Hotel, look at this. This is architecture. We might envy him for this incredible success, building for himself, for being, the Medici, and at the same time a Leonardo, as he put it. Although, as I said, Leonardo didn't build, but he built. But these spaces, this urbanization of the core of the building, because he actually brought the city within the building. This is a public space in a building which is okay. It is public in the sense it's a hotel, but it's a private hotel. It's not a city. This is a vertical city here, and people don't actually use it. It's just people walk on the corridors, and maybe they stare at this void. This void. That's why I said that this giant void, to me, has some metaphysical aspiration somehow, or connotations. Look at this. It's amazing. Can you imagine? I mean, he could have approached these two sides of the building and just have a corridor serving rooms on both sides. He didn't need functionally this huge thing. Just imagine, air conditioning this giant space. It's a cathedral within a hotel. That's what it is. It's a cathedral inside a hotel. Think about this. It just crossed my mind, this. I didn't think of it before, but I think that's what it is. A cathedral inside a hotel. It sounds perverse, no? These are other buildings he built. I like this building. You see, when he ends his building at the top, in a simple way, I think is very convincing. Even here, yes, he has a curvature, but otherwise the building has austerity and has simplicity. And I think he's fine. He's a good architect. The sculptures are not his, although he did art too. I understood he painted a lot. I should have incorporated some of his paintings. I didn't see them, but I should search for them because I'm actually curious. How did Portman paint? He did have artistic aspirations. And indeed, he puzzles one. How could one be a real estate, empire, because that's what he was, and also an artist? I can barely pay, my electricity bill, and this man is building for himself these giant hotels. Look at these spaces. He was a phenomenon in his own way. He was not one of the best architects of the world, but we cannot say that he was not an architect. He was an architect. An architect of unbelievable voids. These atriums are truly, look, they are not banal. They are truly, I don't know if he was aware of it. Maybe unconsciously he was longing for God or something, or for the above, because I see a metaphysical something here in these giant, vortexes. Truly, this is almost the contradiction of what a hotel is. Yes, I think the man, he built hotels, but he should have built cathedrals. I don't think he built any church. But I think his inner self was meant to build cathedrals, not hotels. This could have been a great cathedral, probably one of the most amazing cathedrals. And it's just the atrium of a banal, well, huge, but banal hotel. Yes, I almost feel tempted to prepare a material called the atriums, or the giant voids of John Portman. You see, nobody. In fact, he didn't build for people. He said it should be about people and life. Actually, very rarely I came across one single person, his giant buildings. No one is there. He was concerned with something else, really. And I think it's possible, but I shouldn't get carried away, that he was actually, longing for God. Let's put it in this blunt, simple, simplistic, maybe, and maybe not even true way. It's not so much what he built, is what he didn't build. The interiors, the giant voids, the giant atriums that he built are what John Portman was really about. The plans, forget the plans, they look as they look. If you look at this plan, diagrammatic plan, you don't realize the immensity of the spaces above. You see, it's better if you don't see those burlesque Las Vegas like horrid elevators. It's better, I think. Now here, Regency Atlanta. This is the man who built Atlanta in a way. Apparently, he was living and working in Atlanta, and he built several buildings there, which are his trademark. And again, this building is fine until you arrive here. This part of the building turns me off. This so-called science fiction, this unidentified flying object at the top is very vulgar and cheap, and it should not be here. But without it, the building was just fine. I don't know why he needed this, disturbing, thing at the top. Try to make abstraction of it if you can, and let's see. yeah. Yeah, I really don't understand why he needed this little melodrama here. He didn't. Look, when you don't see it, it's much better, isn't it? Yes, it's a rendering, but if the building looked like this, it would have been just fine. But unfortunately, he added that so-called artistic thing at the top, and that destroys everything. As this thing also, but this does not belong to him, although he was the owner of the building. So I imagine even this thing was put here with his approval. Anyway, so forget the little Las Vegas elevator. The building is fine without that. The Hyatt Regency Atlanta in September 1967. This is probably at that top. From the interior, it looks okay, I guess, considering it's a bar, you know, after all. It's commercial in an open way, in a declared way, in a sincere way. The Peachtree Center in Atlanta, here he is, the developer, the Mecena, the Medici and the Leonardo at the same time, looking at his creation he paid for himself. I like these buildings, I really do. You know, I dislike repetition. I dislike the T-square and the rectangle. I dislike Cartesian mentality. But I think these buildings do have architectural quality. You know, they are actually in their vigor and austerity. They are also sensitive, in my opinion, with these vertical windows and the breaking of the large volumes into narrower portions. I really like what I look at here. And I hope I have more images with this, because I think here he shows that he was a good architect. This one is San Francisco with another atrium, a little bit different. We are going to see the building from the outside. Let's see. So we saw pictures of this, and even in the plan, I mean, look, this is a large complex of buildings like in China. The atrium that you see here belongs to this building here. I mean, this is not an architect who didn't have something to say. I think he did have something to say in architecture. Yes, unfortunately, he was seduced by such extravaganzas. If we can get rid of these things, his architecture has qualities. Yeah, it's this thing and what is here at the top that, in my opinion, diminishes the, you know, the robustness, even aesthetical robustness of the work. Look, when you don't see it, you know, in this rendering from before the building was built, yes, you still see something here, and this should have been absent, in my opinion. Sorry for, you know, allowing myself to disfigure the project from my total inability to affect it in any way. But I think the man had quality as an architect, but unfortunately his real estate touch, you know, maybe that's what it was. He paid the price as an artist, as an architect, for the fact that he was also, you know, the man who paid for the buildings. It would have been so nice without this. In my opinion, it would have been, you know, as good as the best buildings by Bjarke Ingels. But unfortunately, he added this thing here, which he didn't actually need there. I think the public dimension of architecture is very, very important, even for a private house, because perhaps the challenge of architecture and the beauty of architecture derive from the meeting, explicit or implicit, between the private and the public, what we call the private and what we call the public. even if a house, one family house is private, but I think a good building transgresses the limitations of what we call the private. Even when, yes, there is a fence around, architecture is a social art. And even when you design a small house, that small house, yes, belongs to itself, but it doesn't belong only to itself. It belongs to the larger context, the courtyard, the garden, the street, the city. And I think Portman was aware of the publicness of architecture. I didn't see any private house that he built. I would have been interested to see. Maybe for a next presentation, I will try to find one. I don't know if he built, houses. I don't know. I only know of these pharaonic enterprises. And pharaonic they are. Maybe even Ramses II would have been a little bit embarrassed or, belittled by what Portman did. Although Ramses had, from what I read, 600 children. I think in this field, at least, Ramses had the upper hand, so to speak. Anyway, San Francisco, finally 2 people, freshly married, maybe, who knows? But I wonder what they felt when they looked into this giant void. Did they feel the cathedral that was without being inside the hotel? I don't know, maybe. I wonder what you feel when you see this vertiginous vertical space, staring at you with in its mute way. Mr. Portman, please do something and remove this thing from here. It bothers me. It's like an afterthought, please, you don't need that, Mr. De Medici. You don't need it. You are the Medici. You pay for it. You are the owner. You don't need to please anyone. Please remove this thing from the top, please. Disneyland for adults. John Portman's Dizzying Interior Legacy. That's what someone wrote. I don't know, Disneyland for adults. Maybe it's a little more. Atlanta is the future. At least makers of films and TV series think so, especially those who create visions of times to come. In The Hunger Games, The Walking Dead, and Divergent, the city appears unnamed as the setting for omnipotent rulers and dark deeds. Sometimes you see its towers, sometimes soaring, swirling atria of unreadable scale. They tend to convey megalomania, dystopia, and disorientation. This cinematic Atlanta was shaped by one man in particular, the architect-developer John Portman, who until he died last year, well, this was written in 2018, I imagine, spent almost all his 93 years in the city. The hotels, malls, and offices that from the early 60s started to define the downtown, the Merchandise Mart, the Hyatt Regency Hotel, the Peachtree Center, the Marriott Marquis are his work. These were not just profitable commercial ventures. Portman ended up with a personal wealth of hundreds of millions of dollars, but in his eyes, works of art. Urbanists that forgot the urban. John Portman's legacy in Detroit. Although I think he was very interested in the urban, but he brought the urban into the stomach of his own buildings, at the interior of his own buildings. Some people criticize him for it because they thought that he didn't honor the street sufficiently. Maybe he wanted to verticalize the street by bringing it inside his buildings. I don't think this was a man who ignored urbanism, no. But let's see at what he did in Detroit. In my opinion, an unfortunate work. The so-called Renaissance, sorry for the spelling, is wrongly spelled. I should have corrected it. Renaissance Center in Detroit. Look at this. I mean, Detroit, which suffered immensely because of the banishing of its jobs to China and other countries. You know, it collapsed economically, and this kind of so-called Renaissance center does look, you know, out of place in Detroit, because it has a triumphalism that is inadequate for the city as it is now. It was built before the economic disaster that Detroit arrived at, and we talked a little bit about it when I presented the US Pavilion at the Venice Biennial in 2016. What can we say? From the outside, is a complex of buildings that tell you, you know, stay away from me. I mean, I am humorous a little bit, or I attempt to be, but this is not a building that it invites, you know, the man on the street. No, this is a building that tells you, stay away from me. I'm not welcoming you. So the Renaissance Center atrium at street level, courtesy of, you are going to see some drawings, some plans of this Renaissance Center. The drawings are not too bad. You know, they have a certain idealism, a certain speculative, you know, graphic quality. I wish the spirit of the plans was more obvious or more present in the physicality of the buildings. But what we see here, it's a rendering, but it's very commercial, you know, and it's about, of course, eating, and eating again. You know, it's an eatery. You know, for how long are we going to be obsessed by eating? Of course, we have to eat in order to live, but to live in order to eat is wrong. And I will mention this in my last edition of Icarch Daily. These people here are real people, you know, struggling, you know, like me and you, and, you know, struggling to pay rents, to pay mortgages, to pay the bills. But this so-called Renaissance Center behind them, it's about something else. I don't know exactly who made this picture and why and what for, but, you know, the democracy of this gathering of people here is in contrast, in my opinion, with the grandioseness of grandiosity of the so-called Renaissance Center, pretentiously called so. The Renaissance Center diagram of interior walkways. Wow, you think it's an airport? No? Well, it's not an airport. Another, I should not have had so many explanations. But there is a level of, and we even have octagons, and it happens that I like octagons. And by the way, of Leonardo, maybe you know, Leonardo da Vinci loved octagons too. So maybe that could be some kind of bridging between the less modest John Portman and Leonardo da Vinci. They both like octagons. He liked other things as well, but the octagon is present, as you can see. I like the abstractness of the drawings, but I don't like the commercialism, the grandiosity of the commercial, you know, exterior of the buildings. The diagrams of the plans are acceptable, to say the least. Okay, here is another plan. I wish something of the spirit of these drawings were conveyed also in the exterior of the building, but they are not actually. Because of that enclosure, you know, monolithical and, you know, monomaterial, you know, all that glass, they are very self-contained. They are not open. I like the drawings more, because they have a certain ornamental quality, which I didn't see. Let's go back for a last image, because my presentation ended now. You know, here, look at the buildings, you know. They are very blunt. They are opaque, although they use a lot of glass. They are inferior, in my opinion, as architecture. But let's transmit from the Earth from 2021 our hello to Mr. John Portman, who is waiting for us somewhere outside of this world. Thank you.